Good morning, good evening, everyone. Wherever you're located, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar, which will take a look at why cloud-based contact centers are so compelling and why the adoption of the cloud model by contact center prospects has been so impressive. My name is Jackie Tesmer, and I'm the VP of Service Provider and Cloud Strategy at Enghouse Interactive. I'm also joined by Skylar Johnston, who owns Product Marketing for Contact Center Service Provider. Skylar's helping out today. He's going to be monitoring your questions via the question feature, and we'll handle those at the end of the webinar. We're pleased to sponsor today's webinar. I'm excited to introduce Donna Fluss of DMG Consulting, who will lead this discussion on one of the hottest topics and trends in the contact center space, the contact center as a service, or the cloud contact center model, and what the prospects for cloud contact center are looking for in their service providers and what it takes to be a successful provider of cloud contact center. Donna is likely the best analyst in the industry to cover this topic, as she is a highly regarded expert on contact center, analytics, as well as the back office, with 30 years of experience helping organizations build world-class contact centers. DMG Consulting is also the publisher of the Cloud-Based Contact Center Infrastructure Market Report, which I believe personally is the best analysis of this dynamic cloud contact center market. With that, I'll turn it over to Donna to get us started.
Alrighty, great. Thank you, Jackie. Well, given the choice between talking about the Cubs and contact centers, any of you who are long-suffering Cubs fans, as I am, we know what it is I'd be talking about. But we're also going to talk about a really exciting topic, which is the cloud-based contact center infrastructure market. Excuse me. Many of your customers need contact center capabilities, even if they don't fully understand what they need or who to buy them from. They may want basic or advanced routing and queuing functionality to ensure that a call, email, chat, social media interaction gets to the best person in their department or even their company. They may need a call recording solution in order to comply with all types of regulations, which keep getting stricter and stricter, and this is, through in many countries all over the world. They may want a regulatory compliant dialer to help them reach the right people while staying out of legal trouble. Or they may need quality assurance software so that they can audit their salespeople and activities. And we know how important that is. So let's take a look at the presentation and discuss the world of cloud-based contact centers. We're going to talk about what your customers really want, and then we're going to wrap up with a review of the typical sales cycle for service providers. The opportunity is large and growing for vendors that know how to effectively sell cloud-based contact center ACDs and dialers and other related contact center capabilities. So with that, let's take a look at the first slide. Now that it absolutely does matter, and it is essential for service providers to find a really good technology provider who also has the applications. And it's not just a matter of contact center technology, but it has to be designed to be a cloud-based solution. And that is a huge differentiator in the marketplace. Now, if you look up to the top of this, you're going to see the optional modules. And these are the modules that you don't have to have, but are increasingly things, excuse me, that your customers expect you to have. When we talk about cloud-based contact center solutions, the number one most in the cloud solution in the contact center world is IVR. And we believe that 65 to 70% of IVR is done out of the cloud. And it's been in the cloud long before this whole concept really started to pick up. The second most in the cloud solution is ACDs and dialers. And then of interest, the third most is the first item on the top left there of the optional modules, workforce management. And of interest, again, it's not one of the core capabilities. But here's what it is, as are the rest of these optional modules. When it comes to the world of cloud, it's about ease. And your customers are looking at you as a general contractor. And they expect you to make it easy for them to do business, for you to bring to them all the capabilities that they need. So the core are givens. And then they do expect workforce management, they do expect QA, they do expect screen capture, they do expect gamification and surveying. Now, when it comes to CRM, that they just want you to be able to integrate with. And they do accept that that's going to be sold by a different third party, maybe Zendesk, Salesforce, or whoever it happens to be. Now, let's just kind of jump to the right on this chart. And there you've got another blue. And what you see there are lots of integrations. So when cloud first came out, the idea was that vendors would just give their customers cloud and that they would say, thank you very much. But that changed really quickly. The world of cloud today is a very complex environment in some cases. It can also be very simple, but increasingly becoming more complex, and more your customers expect you to be able to do or facilitate integrations. And part of the reason is because while we say cloud or we say SaaS, although there's actually some differences in those, what really more and more we see is hybrid. And a hybrid is an environment where some things are in the cloud and some things aren't. Now think about it. If you've got a customer who is migrating from a premise-based environment to a cloud-based environment, and that is the vast majority of the seats today, they very likely already have, it could be WFM, it could be QA, and they may ask you to either integrate or help them integrate to it. It is an amazing world. It is full of opportunity, but it is a complex world. So now, let's take a look at the next slide, and we're going to drill into the core requirements. So there are 12 core requirements. When your customers reach out to you, these are the 12 things that they expect you to be able to do for them immediately. The first is they expect you to be able to do the ACD, routing and queuing, right, including skill-based routing. So, this is just, beginning capabilities, fine. They also expect you to be able to do dialer and list management. Now, the way it classically works is that if you are a dialer organization, a company that is doing outbound, you expect there to be inbound ACD. However, if you're an inbound shop, you don't necessarily have to have outbound, but increasingly organizations want that. But it's not just the 8 different modes of outbound that your customers may want, from preview to progressive to predictive to TCPA and regulatory compliant dialers, or to power dialing, to click the call. It's all types of dialing capabilities. But they also are going to want you to have some form of list management capability so that they can load it up. Again, think about the general contractor. That is what you are for them. And so, those are the first 2 in core capabilities. Then they expect you to have IVR and voice prompter. And these aren't the same technologies. When we talk about voice prompter, we are absolutely talking about a pretty much just a router. Press 1 or say 1 in order to get to customer service. Press 1, say 2 in order to get to sales, etc. And in today's world, it is essential, by the way, not just to be able to press, but to say, because we are a mobile-enabled, hands-free world. And then when we get into IVR, here's a place where you can have some amazing differentiated capabilities, depending on what you want to offer your customers, because IVRs absolutely, self-service applications can absolutely automate a large percentage of the calls. You can use it to give your agents the information they need. You can use it for screen pop. You can use it for verification. There are a lot of things you can do with it. Then we have the universal queue. The universal queue functions as a funnel and allows you to bring in all different types of channels, chat, email, social media, phone calls, and so that you can then treat them with the routing capabilities and the queuing capabilities. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to be the same. Actually, they shouldn't be in most cases. In a few cases where you've only got a handful of people, maybe they will be the same. But in most cases, they aren't. But what you do want to do is have one standard way of handling and treating them so that you can ensure that you've got a consistent experience. throughout your shop. Then we have, CTI, computer telephony integration, screen pop. Again, just a standard capability, and there's so much that you can do with screen pop beyond the basic screen pop, depending on the level of integration. We have the concept of presence, which in the contact center world pretty much means state management, but presence is a UC capability, unified communications capability, more sophisticated. Number 7 on the list is recording. Your customers expect you to be able to do 100% recording. That is a must-have out of the box. Now, a nice-to-have, going back to, conceptually to the prior chart, will be screen capture. But call recording is a regulatory requirement in a lot of different countries. Now, unified desktop, this is one that people sometimes scratch their heads on. And here's what this is. This is not a CRM. And most organizations need to have some type of CRM or servicing application. What the unified desktop is an environment which allows your agents to see whatever the interactions are. So in the good old days, we just had phone calls. And so you could have a soft phone, a hard phone, and, just click on a couple different things and do what it is you need. But now our agents need some kind of environment in which to see the email, in which to see the chat, in which to see the social media. So a unified desktop is critical. Reporting. So here is the Achilles heel of the contact center marketplace. And here's where you guys as service providers can differentiate yourselves. So you absolutely need to have your 10 to 100 or 200 standard reports. And I'm not a huge fan of 200. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of just 10. But you need to have your standard reports that they can then do their own thing with. And it's to do their own thing where the issue is. Every single call center or contact center that I speak to complains about the reports. It's just an amazing thing. And here's how it is you can beat that. You can decide to give your customers 1 or 2, it could be 3, whatever the number is, it could be based on the number of seats, custom reports. And quotation marks around custom, because odds are you already have a template to do what it is, and you can work with them, make a couple of changes, and have the happiest, stickiest customer and reduce your number of complaints by doing something special like that for your customers. That's a major differentiation for you. Now, unified messaging, another critical capability, and but also a debatable one. So, we're going through the era of turning off our voicemail. And now one of the requirements is all types of different messaging, including voice messaging. But here's the thing. If you're not going to give your agents or representatives or advisors, whatever you want to call them, time to call people back, then don't use voicemail because it sets the wrong expectations. Now, mobility, another amazing area where we're going to see tremendous innovation and already have. When we talk about mobility, we're talking about, first of all, the supervisor's ability to walk around and do their jobs or sit in a restaurant and do their jobs. Not that they want to do that, but maybe you want them to. So that's number 1. Number 2, we're talking about the agent's ability to look at their own stats, set their schedules, and do a lot of things right on their mobile phones. Those two are, the supervisor is a given today. The agent is a bit of a nice to have. Now, the third capability is just starting to be a requirement, and that's where we're giving our customers, the end user customers, the consumers, the ability to have a mobile-enabled application. Kind of cool. And then lastly, the ability to integrate. It is essential for cloud-based contact center infrastructure vendors to enable their customers, the corporations who use it, to integrate. So you need to have SDKs and open APIs and web services, and very importantly, the resources to either do it for them, show them how to do it, help them do it, whatever it happens to be. But the resources is critical. Now let's look at the next slide and talk about the value proposition. What is it that your customers, the enterprises are thinking about? And I know I'm using the word customers interchangeably. So we've got consumers, if I may, and then we've got your customers because you are the service providers. And here's the 9 things that they're thinking about. To begin with, they want a multi-tenant solution, and you need to give them a multi-tenant solution. For a lot of the reasons that I was talking about before, it has so many different operational benefits. But first one is, let's get down to to the bottom line. And if it is a multi-tenant based solution, the manufacturer, the Enghouse will be able to keep their costs down, and they can then pass it on to you and be more cost aggressive. But that's only the beginning part of it. Being multi-tenant is essential because it really facilitates the whole upgrade process, right? It's not as if they have to upgrade every blade. They just release on a set schedule as defined, right? It drives scalability. It drives flexibility. It drives security. It drives service level performance. So multi-tenancy isn't just one of these, this is a really cool thing. It is essential, and you need to get under the covers and look at the architecture when you're making a selection about your service provider. Then you want a solution that comes pre-integrated. This is the whole general contractor. Your customers expect that. It's just one of the promises of cloud-based contact center solution. Oh, gee, look at this. We don't have to integrate it anymore. The vendor's going to do that for us, and they're going to make it happen. Of course, they'll let us use our own applications when they want to, but they want to keep coming out to you. And this is kind of ties into the next point about being modular. As a service provider, cloud-based contact center is a gift that keeps on giving because, as we talked about before, you've got the core capabilities, and then you've got WFM, and you can charge more for WFM. That's not an upgrade. That's not a new enhanced capability. That's a totally different module. And so you can go back out. And actually, you absolutely should be going back out to your customers based on characteristics and say, hey, how about this capability, WFM? How about screen capture? And with each of these, you're going to be able to increase the revenue that you earn. And very importantly, your customers can come to you and get the modules that they want. I mean, it's just an amazing concept. Now, the no hardware costs and no hardware upgrades. This is one of the things your customers are signing up for. And I'll tell you where it gets tricky. If you're doing recording and they have to keep the recording on site, it can get a little tricky. But part of the expectation is, and then, by the way, there will be some hardware costs, and there will be some hardware because the recording will be on the site. But with the exception of that, there should be no hardware costs. There should be no discussion of hardware except to say, if it comes up, that it's taken care of. Now, no upgrade fees. Now, this one's actually a little bit tricky because your customers expect ongoing innovation and for no cost. Now, there's, as I pointed out, huge difference between, just enhancing, let's say, the routing capability, enhancing the configuration capability, and adding on a new module. So you just need to make that clear, from the get-go, and you will have happy customers. Major reason that a lot of enterprises are migrating to the cloud is that they are just so tired of getting out of date. I mean, I'm working with an organization now who is, 4 or 5 releases out of date, and it's not worth it for them to upgrade. They're just going to go in the cloud, and they keep saying, we just want to be able to stay up to date. Now, low startup costs. Here's another area of major differentiation because this is your decision about what it is you do. I was talking to an organization a couple days ago, insurance, and this guy wants to start an insurance call center. And when I told him that the upgrade fees could be as high as $50K, he didn't know how to contain himself. He turned bright red and said, I can't afford that. Now, the fact is that there are costs in doing upgrade. If you go on site, it's going to cost you to go on site. I don't suggest you use this, that service providers use this as an area to make money. I suggest that you use it as a way to get your customers up so that you can make money. One vendor I was working with a couple days ago decided that they were going to bring on a financing company to help finance it. There are so many ways for you to differentiate yourself in this area. Now, we need to make these solutions affordable for small and mid-sized organizations, and the value prop is different for small and mid-sized than it is for these larger organizations that are, migrating from premise-based to cloud. You need to keep all of those things into consideration. And very importantly, you need to have reasonable ongoing monthly fees. So, people do have in mind what they are supposed to cost. There are over 150 cloud-based contact center infrastructure vendors. There's a lot of competition out there, and you should not be differentiating yourselves just on cost, but you do need to pay attention to what your costs are because there are so many competitors. So now, let's take a look at the next slide, and this really brings together what it is in the minds of the enterprises. They expect the cloud to be easy. And now, from vendor side, it's kind of interesting. All conceptually, you're putting a system in the cloud. All you're doing is you're putting the system in the cloud, and they should have to do everything that they were doing before. But when it comes to contact center, that's not what they expect. IT and the business are both on board with putting things into the cloud. IT has never wanted to, in most cases, not in all cases, in a lot of cases, never wanted to maintain the contact centers because they didn't want to have to carry the resources. They wanted to put them someplace else. And the business gets really frustrated with that. So both sides are very excited with the concept of the cloud. The challenge is the expectations because they don't necessarily just expect to have the system in the cloud. They do expect some form of managed service. So you, as a service provider, have to figure out how to manage those expectations. And there's all types of tricks that can different and techniques that can not just gaming the system, so to speak, but there's all types of ways that you can go about doing this. Your customers are expecting to have an easy provisioning environment, so that they can just get in, they can scale up and down. When it comes to configuration, your customers are expecting some kind of help. And here's a place where you do want to provide some of that help. I've had many situations where small companies have said to me, it doesn't work. And I knew what that meant. It meant that they didn't know how to set it up. And so they moved because they didn't know how to set it up. Well, you worked hard to get that customer, even if they were a small one. So you want to retain them. And so you need to figure out what type of services to provide. You want to help with the implementations. Reporting we already talked about. You may want to get involved ongoing management by doing some oversight. And when it comes to scalability, that is a must-have. You need to be able to scale up and down and only charge them. If you look at the next slide, this really kind of sums it up. They are looking for anything they want to do to be rapid. They want it to be scalable and flexible. So pretty much everything. And critically important, if you take a look at the next slide, is they expect you to provide the expertise. And I can't emphasize this enough. When they call you, you need to know what you're talking about so that you can win their business. When they need help with the integration, you need to be there to help. You need to be able to help them with the configuration. Now, how you charge for these, again, that's part of how it is you want to differentiate yourself. And there's lots and lots of opportunities here. But guys, this is just so critically important to provide the resources and expertise. So now, let's look at the projections for this market on the next slide. And I know I'm going pretty quickly over this. And the projections here are a wow. And just to reference baseball, I'm a Cubs fan, and last night was a wow and not a good wow. What we see here is a great wow. The growth rate of premise-based contact center at most is 3%. This market is growing very quickly, 23% projections for this year, and we're going to hit that, 23.5% for the next 2 years, and 24%. Cloud is here to stay, and the future of contact center is in the cloud. So now, let me wrap up the last slide. And here's a sales cycle that I put together for you. And as you can see, there's two categories of what's going on. There's what your customers do, and then there's your activities. So, clearly your customer identifies a need. And very often, they're not really sure what it is they need. as I mentioned right at the beginning. They know they don't like the way the calls are being handled. They know that it's doesn't seem to be efficient, and people calls or emails or chats. They know they can't even handle the chat, whatever it is. So they know they have a need. So that then they go online, or they reach out to people like us to find our report. But they do research, and it's like, okay. And then they reach out. When they reach out, this is a moment of truth. So, first of all, you've got to have great information, clear information, make it obvious that you are in this business. And when they reach your people, they've got to know what they are talking about. It can't just be, oh, I think we do that, which happens quite a bit. So that you have to have the right people. Now, you can transfer the call to a contact center specialist, but you need people at the front end who rapidly identify and say, hey, let me get you to the right person. I've got the best person here to talk to you about that. And, they'll give you great ideas about what to do. You need to understand, right, their requirements. And then you need to differentiate your service. There's lots of competitors. And go back to the points. They want ease, they want expertise, and they want to know that you are always there for them, right? Then let's get to practical. You need to provide a quote and close that deal. And the one last comment I want to make, and this one I am begging, please give them a contract that is appropriate for the cloud. I was working with somebody a couple months ago, and the vendor gave them a 50-page contract. Obviously, that vendor came from the premise-based side and thinks that that's what they should do in the cloud. No, it's not. You need to give these people a 2, 3, 4-page contract. You need to have the service level. Make it easy for them, and they will be your clients for a very long time. So with that, I want to thank you, and now I'm going to pass the call back to Jackie, who is Enghouse's VP of Cloud Strategy. Jackie?
Thanks, Donna. This is good stuff. And frankly, it's really great to see the cloud contact center market growth statistics you shared with us, which are really quite hot off the press, if you will, meaning you're releasing those pretty much in real time, I believe, right?
Absolutely. The report isn't even out yet, so you guys are the first ones to see the numbers.
I like that. I'd now like to take, if you guys will bear with me, just a few minutes to tell you a bit about Enghouse Interactive and our contact center service provider product. Then we'll take a few questions. Again, send those in through that question feature, and we'll let you know a little bit more about our solutions and how you can get a hold of us to learn a little bit more. So who is Enghouse Interactive? We are actually a subsidiary of Enghouse Systems Limited, which is a software and services company that was founded in 1984, headquartered in Toronto, and traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We are a global company. We've got offices in about 20 plus locations, 1,400 employees, and we estimate 10,000 plus customers who use our contact center, attendant console, and self-service solutions to manage their customer interactions. We are a fiscally strong company with 18% calculated annual growth on both native and acquisition strategies. And in fiscal year 2015, we had $280 million in revenue and closed our most recent quarter, third quarter of fiscal 2016, with $90 million in cash and cash equivalents. So we are frankly not one of those companies you read about that's trying to sort out what to do about all their debt. Contact center service provider's got a vision, and it's basically to be a software application, a cloud contact center delivery platform. We sell our software to service providers. Our service providers build a contact center as a service business and take it to market. And what we work to do is meet the needs of the service provider as well as the tenant. So a key tenet of our product strategy is that we have two customers. We have the service provider as a customer, and we have their customer, which is a tenant on their platform, the end customer as a customer. We believe when you provide the best TCO on our platform, on CCSP as a platform, to the service provider, they will be able to pass those operational and cost efficiencies, flexibility, scalability, all the things Donna just talked about, on to the tenant, their customer. And that's really critical in this competitive and very cost competitive market. This software has been in production at service providers around the world for over 10 years. It came to Enghouse in 2011 via the acquisition of a company called Cosmocom, who got into this cloud contact center space very early. It's built multi-tenant from the ground up. It was always multi-tenant from day one, and we believe that that's just that cornerstone feature that makes shared resources a matter of being able to provide that scalability, that flexibility, that upgradability, and the reliability you need in a software that's providing cloud contact center, in combination with a strong feature set. So CCSP, Contact Center Service Provider, a cloud contact center platform. Again, we believe one of that cornerstone features is multi-tenant platform, shared resources, highly scalable. Our provisioning portal is a service provider and tenant web accessible self-service administration module that really simplifies and speeds onboarding of new tenants and then making the day-to-day administration of the contact center a breeze, whether it's adding agents, deleting agents, changing routing rules, all the things you do day-to-day via the provisioning portal. CCSP has a very intuitive agent desktop. We call it Touchpoint. It's based on HTML5. We provide open interfaces and APIs, which makes what I call integratability a centerpiece. So extensions to our platform via gadget creation. We have what you call a gadgetory, which is where you create your integrations and expose or make your integrations available. They're easy to add. They're easy for the service provider to create, which is what differentiates their offer. So you can create those integrations to other modules and differentiate your offer from other service providers that are using, frankly, our same CCSP platform. You add value with these other integrated applications as well as a revenue stream. We can overlay a PBX. We can deliver a call to a POTS line, if there are any of those still out there, a mobile phone, but typically it's a PBX extension or direct dial. We can integrate and overlay a UCaaS, a Unified Communications as a Service platform, or do SIP straight to the agent desktop. We front-end this all with a voice prompter and an IVR. So we have both capabilities, and we can use that IVR data for CTI screen pops and for skill and real-time data-driven intelligent routing with a universal queue where the agent manages all their interactions across all the media. We've got the channels you would expect: inbound voice, outbound dialing, automated, email, chat, the ability to add SMS and social interactions. They're all available. Everything you would expect that we just defined earlier as table stakes and or the extras. It's got built-in integrated recording for all media items as well as screen recording, and that's layered with a robust set of supervisor features so that she or he can manage their agents, monitor the agents, access the reporting, provide real-time dashboards to both agents and supervisors, as well as an analytics platform for managing the trending in the call center. CCSP fully meets the needs of our service providers and therefore their customers, and that's what this product's all about. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. Skylar's been monitoring those. I want to thank you for listening to my quick overview of Enghouse and CCSP, and I'll turn it over to Skylar to take some of those questions that were sent in via the question feature. Skylar?
All right, great. So we've got a handful of questions. The first one I'll direct to Donna. The question is, what size or what type of organizations are buying contact center in the cloud?
All righty, Skylar. So, excuse me. In regard to the size, when cloud-based contact center first came out, and Cosmocom is one of the two founders of this entire industry, by the way, the company that Enghouse bought. The concept was that cloud contact center would democratize the world of contact center. And the idea was it would make it available, cost-effective for companies that were small and mid-sized. And that's absolutely going on, and companies that are just trying to figure out if their call centers or contact centers are absolutely now have the ability to get on. That was what we saw right at the beginning. But now what we see going on is the vast majority, and I mean, I would say probably 90 to 95% of the seats are large and and very large organizations who are moving into the cloud. The cloud is for everyone. The future of contact center will be in the cloud. It doesn't mean that there won't be some premise-based implementations. There will. But whether it be for the core infrastructure or all those add-on modules from WFM to QA to contact center performance management, gamification, it is all available in the cloud. And so cloud is for contact centers of all sizes. Skylar?
Okay, the next question, sorry, I'm just trying to kind of paraphrase the questions. I think Donna on this one as well. Who is reaching out when it comes to contact center as a service? I think that means business or IT side.
Yeah, that's a really fun one. And as you know, I talked about this a little bit. So, there were so many different things that we, folks in the industry thought were going to happen when it came to this. And everything we thought actually turned out not to be the case. So it's really, really a good question. Everyone's reaching out. Business is reaching out because, and it depends on the size of the business, right? And whether they have a solution or don't have a solution. So if they don't have a solution, they're not sure what they need in a lot of cases, and they're absolutely turning to their service providers, their carriers, and they're reaching out as a business. And that's why it's so important for you, the service providers, to have the right people receiving those opportunities, the email inquiries, the web forums, the phone calls, so that, when they ask, we're trying to figure out the best way to route the call to get it to the right person, or the email, that to you should go, warning, 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 or great, great, great opportunity. That is a, opportunity for cloud-based contact center, and get it to an expert who can work with them. So we've got the business side, and we also have the business side who's just really tired. Sophisticated users, got hundreds of seats, really tired of dealing with their own internal IT. I mean, one of the value props, and I didn't put it on paper, but one of the value props that businesses tell me all the time is they just are tired of the slow response from IT. So, that's the business side. And so they, and so part of their value proposition is they expect to get much more rapid and responsive service provider. Okay, then IT is looking at this and going, I don't have the resources. If I have 3 different contact center solutions in my organization, then I need to have, 2 people trained on each system, and I can't even keep them up to date. So IT is also really psyched about getting out of the core contact center configuration and management business. So both sides, this is something where, more and more, hopefully, we're seeing agreement on both sides, but both IT and the business are actively engaged in moving contact center capabilities to the cloud. Jackie, is that what you're seeing?
I think it is, and I think the cloud or software as a service trend started in the early days with CRM providers, particularly Salesforce automation, and heads of sales and marketing just end running IT because for exact same reasons you said. IT couldn't get to them. It was, build a business case and get on our list, and by the way, our projects are running out 9 months. I think what's great is the pendulum swung a bit, and now to your point, it's IT's, we really don't want to be running this. This isn't our core expertise. Their CIOs or CTOs are saying, we need to focus on the applications that directly impact the revenue of our business, and that may not be managing contact center infrastructure. And, therein lies the opportunity, I think, for the cloud provider, because your expertise should be running the cloud contact center infrastructure. So I think you're spot on there.
All right, next question. I'll direct this one to you, Jackie. What is the most important things to know as a service provider when setting up a cloud contact center business?
Oh, I like that one because that sounds like it comes from a prospect. Sorry. We find that most have built something of a business case, at least a high business case internally, before they start shopping around for technology partners. And in this case, Enghouse is a technology and a software partner because we sell our platform to service providers. They may or may not gotten enough of the buy-in all over, but it's a combination of knowing they need it, knowing they need to build another business, another product to sell. Contact center tends to be a pretty sticky application, so a lot of that business case is driven by, this is a sticky application, and if they're a telco or a CSP, it's a sticky application that makes it much harder for them to churn on the broadband and the telco services they buy from us. If you're a managed service provider, an application service provider, because there's all kinds of service providers these days, they're not just what I think of as CSPs, communication service providers. You've kind of realized that it's a pool for other services. So contact center is a sticky application. You're thinking you want to get into selling contact center as a service, and typically some of the first folks that get involved are technical and operational. They're the guys and gals that are going to run this thing in the data center, and a lot of times at first for us it's a very technically oriented sale. And we've got some great folks to help you with that, right? I think it's equally as important as someone thinking about and or just engaging in being a CCaaS, contact center as a service provider, that you engage early on your product people, not just your technical people in depth, but as well like a stakeholder committee, your marketing person, your sales engineer sort of stakeholder, a sales leader, so that you can create in parallel. You selected a vendor or start to implement together, you want to be able to, in parallel with that process, do your go-to-market plans, which are really aimed at building that contact center business. Who are you going to target for your prospects? Do you know your business objectives? For example, is it to pull more services? Is it to pull more telco? What's the ratio that you're looking and hoping to pull? What are your packages? How are you going to bundle the features? How are you going to price them? Who are you likely to compete with? Is your package and your bundle of features and your target prospects sort of in line with where you need to be with who you're going to compete with for that same prospect? And what we like to do is we're working with you on getting that platform up and running in the data center. We'd also like to work with you, and we have a process for working with new service providers in sort of go-to-market workshops where we talk about all these sort of things. So I would say it's very intuitive for service providers to get the technical folks engaged early. My advice would be engage a marketing lead, a sales engineer lead, a sales lead, and talk about the other stuff early on and in parallel.
The next question for Donna, in relation to your growth figures, are those global or U.S. projections?
Those numbers are based on worldwide numbers. And as I mentioned, there's over 150 competitors, including service providers, on a worldwide basis.
Okay. Next question, also Donna. What is the biggest challenge facing service providers?
That's such a broad question. Jack just walked through the process of setting up a business, if I may. I think the number one challenge, actually I'd like to have a couple of number one challenges, but I think the number one challenge from what I've seen, because I've worked with service providers who set up businesses and then they reached out for what did they do wrong, is the lack of expertise. So they think that people are going to just come to them, which absolutely is the case, and that they're going to buy the services, which they will. But if their customers, if the enterprises who they're working with aren't getting the value and things aren't working as they're supposed to, as I mentioned, there's 150 competitors, so there's somebody else to move to really, really quickly. So that's what I think the number one challenge is, that service providers need to provide the expertise in conjunction with a great technology solution.
So in expertise, you're really talking about like contact center best practices and sort of best practices of the platform and the service, but maybe even best practices around just the management and administration and day-to-day operations of the contact center, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything, Jackie, that you saw on that slide. So the customers absolutely need the best practices They absolutely need to know how to configure. They need to know what reports they need. They need, experts to tell. Literally, when people, particularly small organizations, are going to the cloud, they don't know how to do this stuff. They don't have experts. They don't have even knowledge on hand. And service providers that want to differentiate themselves are now providing all types of both technical and operational best practices to their customers.
Super. Skylar, why don't we take time for one more question if you've got one?
Sure. Yeah, I'll merge a couple of questions just with coming up on the top of the hour. There was a mention that OVM reports on-premise is still the dominant choice, but is not growing. And then another question is, will Cloud Contact Center replace all premise contact centers? I'll direct this to Donna.
Okay. In regard to the OVM numbers, I'm actually not familiar with the OVM numbers, but we've been covering this market since there were less than 100,000 of these solutions in the marketplace. Let's put it that way. Actually, closer to 50,000 when we first started covering it. And we've been following the growth in the market ever since. I mentioned earlier that the growth rate, and this number is not coming from me, from DMG, because we're not following the growth rate of the premise space, but from other industry analysts, we've been told that the growth rate of the premise-based market is 3%, and you saw the numbers, 23.5, 23, growing to 24, and by the way, on the cloud side, and we think those are conservative numbers. What's happening, though, is this is the law of small numbers, right? So obviously, the number of cloud-based seats are much smaller than the number of premise-based seats. So the percentage growth, just by numbers, is going to be significantly higher. That's number one. But what we're seeing is each year, more and more seats are moving into the cloud, and where they're primarily coming from is the premise side. So lots and lots of premise-based contact centers, as they're upgrading, are going into the cloud, and we do still have lots of small organizations who are now able to use these solutions for the first time. However, premise-based solutions are not going away. There are some very good reasons why some organizations are going to keep a premise-based solution. And it could be their own philosophy. It could be a shop with 20,000 seats. We work with companies, that are on-premise, and we work with companies that are on cloud, and we work with companies that are doing hybrid. So premise-based is not going away, but the future of contact center systems and applications is more and more in the cloud because of something Jackie said, which is that companies want to concentrate on using the application, not installing and maintaining the application. Skyward, does that help?
Yes, thank you. And as a reminder, the recording will be available, as well as a few DMG reports that we will make available. Back to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Skylar. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As Skylar mentioned, we are doing a recording of this webinar, and we will have it posted later this week, no later than Monday next week, on our Enghouse Interactive YouTube and Vimeo channels. We'll follow up with an email with information on how to access the recording, so you'll get the link and you can share that, as well as how to access the 2 articles that were authored by DMG Consulting on our behalf, and which focus on contact center service providers. That's our thank you to you for joining us today. The first article is Tips for Service Providers Selling Contact Center Services. The second one is actually one of my favorite. I think it's probably the best one page of material you'll read in a while on this topic. It's what contact centers want most from cloud technology providers. And that'll supplement the stuff you heard today on this webinar. Contact information is listed here. I'd be glad to follow up with you. Drop me an email with any questions, any comments, any feedback about the webinar, about our products, how I can talk to you more about what we do, anything about today's webinar. Many thanks. Thanks for joining us wherever you were, whether it's early in your day or whether it's late. And we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, Donna.